progress.
We're continuing in the באתי לגני mimer, the third mimer of the series that the Rebbe said, 3 mamorim over a Friday night Shabbos and Motzei Shabbos. We're learning the third mimer entitled באתי לגני. They said Motzei Shabbos with the notes on the bottom with the Hebrew letters incorporating parts of the other 2 mamorim. And we're still in that part of the mimer where the Rebbe takes us through, as well as also still elaborating on the first 13 oisias of the Frierdiker Rebbe's באתי לגני, until he leads us to the main crux of our mimer, which is elaborating on ois Yudalad on chapter 14 of באתי לגani. So the Rebbe is now in the middle of the topic of Shtus the Kedusha. He speaks about how the karoshim, the boards, are made from the same letters like the word sheker, because it's our job to transform the sheker, the falsehood of the world, and to make it a mishkan for Hashem. And with the avoid is to take and to fix up or repair the shtus that's below intellect and to transform it to Kedusha. And how does one do so? So the last thing we were learning is that to be able to transform the shtus that's lamata mitam badas, it's not enough just to avoid al pi seichel. And to prove that, we're about to bring a classic, well-known Rambam about how one takes care of things that are, let's say, negative traits. So we're holding on line 15, on the third page of the copies, page Yudalit. The Dugmas Mashakos Rambam Hilchas Day is similar to what the Rambam wrote in Hilchas Day. It's right away the beginning of the Rambam. Though the straight path is the average or the middle road, that's the way a person is supposed to do. They're not supposed to be cheap, and they're not supposed to be, totally giving away their money completely, etc., etc. The Rambam goes through different things. Kol makom still in all, if he was, let's say, if he was too much going to one extreme, it's not enough to go back to the middle road. He needs to distance himself to the opposite road, to the opposite side. For example, like we said about someone that is stingy, someone that's miserly, it's not enough for him just to go to the middle road. He needs to go to the opposite end, to be extremely given. The example that we were always given is when you have a tree that's growing crooked, you can't just straighten it. You need to now bend it to the other direction so it will straighten out. So the Rebbe uses this concept of the Rambam and applies it concerning Shtus the Klippa, Shtus Shalamat Metam Badas, line 19. Valachas Kam V'Kam Eshkeinu B'Negel. The Shtus the Lumasa, how much more so that this applies concerning the Shtus of the other side, Sheker Oilam, the falsehood of the world, to be able to transform this and make this into a place where Hashem resides. This is only through the avodah. It's beyond reason and knowledge. Even higher than the intellect and knowledge and reason of Kedusha, even beyond Kedusha's rational approach. Because again, to counter the negative shtus, you need to have the positive shtus. And here he goes on to bring the story that's brought down in Masechtas Ksubos that the Frierdiker Rebbe says. And the Rebbe doesn't bring down the story. It's a famous story about the one who juggled different twigs and so on, or different things to entertain the Kala, to bring Simcha by a wedding. So he says, concerning this is brought down the Gemara Masechtas Ksubos, that when this person, even though his colleagues originally said that he was embarrassing them, but when he passed away, they saw a pillar of fire separating him from the rest of the world. So they said, that the old man, in other words, this one that passed away, his shtus assisted him, which means that there is an idea of doing shtus in a positive way, of shtus to kedusha, shtus to l'mayla matam v'das. Therefore, the Rebbe continues in line 25, Mizem, moving for this understood. Also, those that are able to accomplish and effect this type of avodah, they are called the army and the hosts of Hashem, but specifically army. So the Rebbe says in footnote Beis, by this name the Yidden were called when they left Mitzrayim. They were called Tzivus Havaya when they left Mitzrayim. It says it's the end of Parshas Boi. Going out of Mitzrayim was a preparation for Matan Torah. That in Matan Torah was given all the directives concerning all matters of service. That in general is the idea of the making and the building of the Mishkan. So therefore, this is also like fits in with the Yidden being called Tzivus Havaya as part of their process of building the Mishkan, as part of the process of doing what they need to accomplish of bringing the Shekhinah down here. Back to the text, last line on the page. Top of page Vav, the idea of the army, the soldiers of an army. They're going with self-sacrifice. Avoidance beyond the reason and knowledge. To be victorious in the war. The Rebbe in footnote Gimel mentions that in the Maimer and Friedrich Rebbe, he explains three meanings in the word tzava. Tzava can mean army, tzava can mean beauty, tzava can mean a time, a set time. The Rebbe doesn't go into this here. Behind this means that in a different way, if one does not go with the approach of self-sacrifice, there cannot be the victory. The victory is dependent upon only if one is going out to war to have self-sacrifice, to literally be willing to give up one's life. That's the idea of every single Yid. That's why all Yidden are called the army of Hashem, because every single Yid has within themselves the power to give up their lives for Hashem. Even someone that's the lightest of the light in the observance of mitzvahs is still in all ready and able to give up his life for the sanctification of Hashem's name. Line 9. And the Maimer of the Friedrich Rebbe continues to explain, for the sake of the victory in the war, there is the treasure that they give from above. We were already speaking about that. There's the Oitzer of Yerushalayim that every Yid has within them in the previous Maimer. Similar to a war by a human king. Even those treasures that he never touched them. They're not only his personal treasures, so they're also treasures that his ancestors gathered. They are so precious by the king, so he doesn't even display them and show them to anyone. Yet, for the sake of being victorious in the war, see down on footnote Daled, being victorious in the war is the ultimate purpose and intent and will of the king. The being victorious in war is something that matters even more than his intellect. Therefore, the king does things that are beyond rational reasoning, to expend the treasures. Back into the text on line 16. So therefore, the king risks his own life, and he expends all of his treasures, and the treasures that his ancestors gathered. By and through this he's victorious in the war. So he explains, why is that so? Why would the king go ahead and be willing to do things beyond reason and give away and even the treasures that he never even shares with anybody, never even shows it to anyone? So he says in line 18, the idea behind this is the idea of the victory is because of the attribute within the person of victory. The attribute of Netzach reaches in the depth of a person's soul more so than many and any other things. Therefore, the greater a person's quality is, the higher, the more important a person is. So the attribute of persevering and being victorious and defeating the enemies reaches deeper and is much more important to him. What the Chazal say, Kol Talmud Chacham she'eino noiker v'noiter k'nachash, ain't Talmud Chacham, any Talmud Chacham that does not avenge himself and bear a grudge like a snake is not considered a Talmud Chacham. How come? What's the association? Because this is the special quality of victory, that because he's a Talmud Chacham, because he's a lofty person, the victory matters so much more and so much deeper. But the Rebbe right away says over here in the parentheses, the taking vengeance and the bearing a grudge has to follow certain halachic rulings, as it's explained in the Gemara and the codifiers, what exactly that means. He cannot transgress halachas of Torah concerning Nikimah v'Netira. So that if it's so by a Talmud Chacham, because of his lofty stature, so the midah of Nitzachon matters so much. So the Rebbe says in the last line on the page, Valachas kama v'kama, how much more so? Top of page Zayin ben Agil, the Melech concerning a king. The idea of a king, we know he's described, his head and shoulders above the rest, as the expression goes. He is head and shoulders above even the ministers and officers. Therefore, since he is so much higher, we're not talking about physical stature, we're talking about spiritual stature. Therefore, the midah of victory is full force because of the midah of victory. Even treasures that the eye of no man has seen. Not only does he open up his treasures and he gives them, even more so, that he completely expends them without calculation. There's one thing giving, that's nesina. Nesina means a calculated gift. Bizbuz means without thought, without just throwing money out the window, without even giving any thought to it. Another thing is that how does he administer it? How does he send it out? He sends it out through the officers, that they are the ones that are in charge of the soldiers. The purpose is not that the officers should become rich, but the purpose is the actual foot soldiers. Why is the purpose and the goal? The foot soldiers, because it's specifically the foot soldiers that are the ones that accomplish the victory. This means as follows: though the officers are the ones that are involved and invested in and know all the different types of strategies of being able to prosecute the war, as we mentioned in the previous mimer. Mikol Mokum, still in all the ones that are actually accomplishing the victory are the soldiers, that they sacrifice their lives in actuality, like Friedrich Rebbe explains also at the conclusion of the 20 chapters about this. Moving for this understood. Should be able to be victorious in the war. To transform the falseness of the world and to turn it into the boards of the Mishkan. That in it should be the idea of I will dwell. So the Yidden are given from above. Not only things that are fall into the category of revelations, also those matters below that are considered and are like a treasure. What's the idea of a treasure? That it's something that's concealed and closed and sealed from the eye of any one that sees it, other than the king himself. So in the footnote Hey, before we learn the last two lines over here, in footnote Hey, the Rebbe says, how do you go from a state of total concealment to administering this down here below? So he says, the order in this is that the beginning of the Amshach is in a way of a point. That's the self-sacrifice. So we said that every Yid has this this treasure of fear of heaven. This is the self-sacrifice that every Yid is willing to go on. Afterwards it comes out in the way of the righteousness of the process. That's the idea of open. In other words, that spreads out, like we mentioned before in the previous mimer, in such a way that you will burst forth to the west, to the east, to the north, and to the south. Therefore, from this concealed level, it comes out full force and a full expansion, as we were talking about in the previous mimer. Last two lines back in the text on the page, line 20. This is a matter that comes down to the Yid, the Oitzer of Hashem, just like the Oitzer of the king. The Oitzer of Hashem that comes down to be victorious in the war is beyond any matter of revelation, even beyond any highest, most level of revelation. That's what comes down here for the victory of the Yidden in the war. Let's see footnote Vav. Moving from this is understood. When the avoida in all the revealed parts of his soul, it's without end and without being finished. In other words, he's already attained the state of like prozos, of an infinite state of doing things, but still doing it with the revealed level of his soul. This is still insufficient. All of this is a matter of light and revelation. Since Hashem shares with him something that's beyond light and revelation, so my service to Hashem cannot be in a way that's limited only to light and revelation. Tzarich, next page by the footnotes. Tzarich li is kain gam lamata, so the same thing has to be down here below. Sharei tzadikim doimim leboidam, because tzadikim are likened to their creator. So if the creator gives away from the essence that's beyond revelation, that's what the treasures are. It's not even possible to be over there the levels of revelation. So tzadikim, we are all in the level of tzaddikim, have to be also in such a way of doing things in beyond any type of level of revelation. So the Rebbe explains what this means. Again, we're in the first line of the footnote on page Yud Zayin. The idea behind this is Shagam b'madregas tzadikim. Also on the level of tzadikim, when the avoida is based on rational reasoning. This is within the form of the person's own existence. That's the idea of light, because it's rational, it makes sense, and so on. Therefore, it's insufficient, the service of serving Hashem with a love that only encompasses all your heart and all your soul, which is still a limited form to a certain degree. It's still rational. It still has to do with the light and revelations of my soul. It has to be the avodah with all your ma'oid, which we say ma'oid is from the word bligvul, without any boundaries whatsoever. We know that specifically when a person does the avodah b'chol ma'odecha, it's called making and doing the will of the Eibishter, in short. But we've had this many Mamorim before. The Chazal say the difference in the first parsha of Krishma and the second parsha of Krishma is the first parsha is Oisin Ritzayin Shel Malkim. They are fulfilling the will of Hashem. And the second parsha of Krishma is that they're not fulfilling the will of Hashem. Chassidus goes deeper and says the difference is that in the first parsha of Krishma it says B'chol avavcha, b'chol nafscha, b'chol meidecha. In the second parsha of Krishma it says V'avartem, b'chol avavchem, b'chol nafshem. It doesn't say ma'oid. And therefore, because it's lacking ma'oid, it's called ein oiser ritzayin shel malkim. They are not able to make up and create the will of Hashem. And that avodah b'chol ma'odecha, after the parentheses, shu inyam mesiras nefesh, is the level of self-sacrifice. That is a level that's beyond the oir v'gilui. That's a level that it comes from the essence that is higher than everything. And then the Rebbe says that this level of going to the essence, someone could say that, you know what, that's a hidur. I need to do the basics. Don't have to do every hidur and every mahadrim in a mahadrim. So the Rebbe says, in addition to what we said before, this avodah of going beyond reason, going in the level of mesiras nefesh, revealing the treasure in my nefesh. It's not just doing something in the most beautiful way, he's going above and beyond. This matters, and this is necessary to be able to be victorious in the war against the other side. If one does not have this level of mesiras nefesh, then there could be the opposite side in the lowest most way. And here he's talking to the tzaddik, like he explains in the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer in chapter 13, the chapter we learned last year. That it's heaven forbid possible that a person that is a Talmud Chacham can say with the power of Torah a matter of halacha that's the opposite of Torah. Like the Chazal say that it's possible to be a student that could find 150 reasons why a sheretz, which is explicitly Tameh in the Torah, he finds that it's Torah. Because if you're going in the way of your intellect can take you down a terrible road. And the Rebbe now actually connects it. If you remember at the beginning of the previous Maimer that we started this week, the Rebbe said that the pasuk Prozes Teich of Yerushalayim is connected to where it says Mikoil Mechatzitzim Ben Mashabim, the sound of the wood choppers amongst the water drawers. So he says that this spiritually denotes those that are studying Torah. Why? So he says, someone that says a Dvar Halacha, that's the opposite of Torah. Heipech the ha'inyan the kol mechatzim. It's the opposite. of the sound of the one that are chopping. What's it mean, mechatzitzim, in regards to our topic? So the Chazal say mechatzim means they delineate, they cut, they divide and separate. Elu oimrim al tamei tamei val toher toher. Those that say about what is impure is impure and what's pure is pure. That it means chopping. They divide, they separate. That is the appropriate way of learning Torah. That is the sound of the mechatzitzim. Asher abchin al zehu ha'inyan the bein mashabim hashoivim lachedim. What is the test? What is the gauge? Am I truly learning Torah the way I'm supposed to do so? Is if I am amongst the drawers. What's it mean, drawers? Those are drawing water. That they are drawing and giving others Torah as well. That's the test, that they are truly learning Torah the way it's supposed to be. So, after the parentheses, so the Rebbe goes on to explain, how is it possible for a person to be in such a type of way where he's studying Torah, or it could descend to that type of level, or it could result eventually such a type of level, that he can learn Torah, the opposite of Allah of Torah. Since the study by him is only an intellectual endeavor, therefore, without a recognition and cognizance of Hashem, he could be examining and going and coming to conclusions with his mind the opposite of Torah. So how does one control that? How does one overcome that? The victory over this, it's only through the avodah, it's beyond intellect. That's the idea of self-sacrifice. Through self-sacrifice, which is avodah beyond intellect, that it ensures that the Torah that I learn is done in such a manner that it's not endangering halach. Let's go back to the text on the top of page Yud Zayin. The highest level in revelations, because we're trying to trace it back and saying we're getting a revelation that we're getting from the Oitzer that's beyond revelation. So first he has to work his way up to what's revelation, and then he's going to go beyond that. So he says, that's a revelation that has no end. This is what the Frierdiker Rebbe brings in his Maimer. What says in Tikkun Zohar, the infinite light of Hashem is high to no end and below to no end. The fact that it's called light, it's obviously a level of revelation. It's not the level that we're talking about, the ultimate level, the level of Oitzer, the level that's concealed, etc., etc. The very category, the very definition of light is revelation. But what type of light is it? It's not just an ordinary revelation. A light that's called infinite, that it's higher to no end and below to no end. And then the Frierdiker Rebbe goes on to explain in his Maimer, the great quality of these descriptions, that it's high to no end and low to no end. Beginning with the explanation of what it means below to no end. So the Rebbe in footnote Zayin says a very interesting point. And he says, why does the Frierdiker Rebbe start in his Maimer first explaining the Lamata Dein Tachlis and then explains Lamayla Dein Ketz, if in the Zohar, the Tikkun Zohar, he says first the other? Let's look in Zayin, bottom of the footnote. Though the expression in the statement of the Tikkun Zohar, he says first that it's higher to no end, and afterward he says it's below to no end. So why does the Frierdiker Rebbe choose to explain the latter thing before explaining what's said first in the Tikkun Zohar? Still in all, the lamata the tachlis. He first prefaces to explain the idea of how it is below to no end. Knowing the level of below to no end, that matters primarily for our service. From explaining the quality of below to no end, then it will be understood even more so the quality and the level of higher to no end. And then we work our way even higher. We're like building up higher. And therefore it will be understood how much more so by going up and up and up. The great quality of the Oitzer that's higher than the revelation of the Ein Sof. So when we go on tomorrow, we're going to go on summarizing the level of Lamata Dein Tachlis that the Friedrich Rebbe says in his Maimer, and then we're gonna go into further in that topic and Ois Yudalit and the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer, etc.